Well, hello and welcome. I'm Kate Bates, joined by the one and only Anna Russell, and we're here for week 4, season 3 of the WTRL Zwift Racing League. Anna, we're going to kick off this week's racing with APAC, and we're heading to London for the greatest London flat.
I do like this course. It's got a very long lead in, which takes a few people by surprise. So it is 31k, although you do think it's 7.5k less. But you do have, as you can see in the course map here, a long sort of red lead in area. And after that, a few little ups and downs, mostly flat, as you can see from that course profile at the bottom. But that part in Richmond Park, I believe it is, through that green area, very, very hard on the legs at the end of the course. Lots of ups and downs there.
Yeah, so we're in for a team's time trial this week. It's always an interesting event, especially when it's on this kind of course that you can describe as flat, but isn't necessarily. Now, not to be confused with the Greater London Flat. This is the greatest London Flat. I hope nobody did the wrong recon tonight. Anna, it starts at the mall. There's about a 7.5k lead in until they do hit that lap. And it would be fair to say that aero rules on this kind of course with bike selection.
Oh, for sure. You're looking at the Specialized Venge S-Works with the preferably disc wheel if you have it. Otherwise, the slipperiest wheel you can get, maybe the Zip 808s or the NV 7.8s would be the best. A lot of people do still like their Tron bikes, I think, just because it matches the kit. I think it's just the aesthetics rather than the actual speed component, but we'll probably see a few Trons out there as well.
Every week you get tons of people on the Trons. And to be honest, if I don't want myself in game, I would likely take it everywhere with me and show it off as well. It also does match the kit, you're right. And look, let's be honest, we spend as much time talking about the fashion on here as we do the racing. So maybe it is for that. Now, before we jump down to the racing, let's take a look at what the standings look like overall so far. Alrighty, now we'll look at the Bs here. We've got the AHDRL Bam Babes tied, leading here with TBR Smile on B. So that's pretty tight race at the top because it's only 1 point back to Zed Sun Real. We've got the Bombshells in 4th, BRT Fiery Kittens, We Race for Cake in 6th, and then Phenomenal in 7th. But that's certainly very tight at the top of the table, Anna, with that top 3.
For sure. Looking at the C division now, TBR Smile on C. I have a few nicknames again from the TBR team, so I'll share those later in the show. AHDRL Crazy Cakes in 2nd, the AHDRL Cruzettes in 3rd, Rave C Oz in 4th, AHDRL Spin Mafia in 5th, Herd of Corellas in 6th, the Degenerates in 7th, TZP Lacklax in 8th, CMA Queen Bees in 9th, and the TBR Party Bus in 10th.
Alrighty, let's take a look at the Ds. We've got Rave D Oz leading the way there. Again, another tie at the top of the table with the AHDRL Diamonds in 2nd. So whoever beats the other one out this week will head to the top of the table ahead of week 5. We've got the Daiquiris sitting in 3rd, the Herd of Bilbies in 4th, and CMA Girl Power rounding out that 5th spot. So let's jump over and take a look at where the men are standing at the moment. And now this is Div 2. So we've been watching the Div 1 a little bit, but Div 2, Anna, the Team ZWC allies are at the top.
They sure are, but tied with the Aero Masters in 2nd. So another very tight battle we'll be having tonight between those two. TZP Alpha in 3rd, the Peter Z Vividores in 4th. Tied with Bear Claw in 5th, the Evo Vandals in 6th, Coalition Genesis in 7th, Evo Barbarians in 8th, KRTA Kiss My Anthea in 9th, and Relentless Chaos in 10th.
A few cheeky names, aren't there? Let's look at Div 2, the Bs. The Dad's Inside Riding Trainers OG, they are leading with a decent lead after only 4 weeks. Innsbruck Ringers in 2nd, Relentless Mayhem in 3rd, TT1 Bruisers in 4th, the WTRL Mercenary Colts in 5th, Evo Mad Max 2021. That sounds like a blockbuster movie to me. They're in 6th, the AHDR Beers in 7th, the Dynamics are in 8th, WMZ Bumble in 9th, and AAVF rounding out that top 10.
And looking here at the Div 2Cs, AHDR Chargers in first, AHDR Choppers in second, Dirty Chums in third, Zeds Unleashed in fourth, Eat Dirt Cheap in fifth, Tune Bikeworks C in sixth, WMZ Cheetahs in seventh, TZP Chuckies in eighth, Valhalla Lavatines in ninth, and Cryogen Alto de Letras in 10th.
There's some funny names, aren't they? Honestly, I feel like sometimes they do it to just see the reaction from the commentary, and they normally get one too.
Oh, for sure.
Anna,
I
you
just always
love a
get a
good. Sorry.
little worried there that I'll slip up and just say something that we can't edit out later.
I'm hoping you do that too, honestly. That would be quite funny. Anna, you are a very big fan of Teams Time Trials, and your whiteboard loves them even more. If you had one piece of advice for any team heading out there today, what would that be?
Well, actually, I have been chatting with a teammate of mine, and she's been talking to the Canadian Olympic Team Pursuit team about team time trial tactics. And their greatest piece of advice, which I'll share, is that you need to be really familiar with your team. You need to almost be friends, and you need to know all of the team's strengths and weaknesses. So my one piece of advice, if you don't have a great team time trial tonight, maybe go have a virtual coffee later this week and prep for the next one by getting to know each other.
Yeah, well, and I liked the almost be friends. So look, if you don't like your teammate, just try. And that seems like it could be the magic sauce. We'll see how that goes. All right, let's jump down and look at the pictures when we can and see how they're going out on course. We do expect some pretty fast, 31.3 kilometres in total, but as we said, it's not necessarily challenging from the sense of elevation or anything out there. It's definitely going to be a lot more about form and cohesion within the team.
Yeah, for sure. And this is actually a team I know well because I am racing for them while I'm with child and racing in their B team. In the USA East Division. So Fearless is a great women's team on Zwift. One of the early community teams, has a huge following. They're doing the running league. They did the duathlon league. They've got multiple teams in the Zwift racing league as well. So yeah, great to see them out here. Looks like they've just got 4 though, which, you can have 6. So that'll hurt them a little bit, but looks like they're trucking along pretty well here, about 34k an hour. I know Amy Levang there from the States, mother of 4, so doing extremely well to be out on the bike.
Yeah, that is. I like how you say with child, by the way. That makes it sound a whole lot more interesting than actually the process is. But it is. I feel like for some of these riders, being able to get out there and race on Zwift is kind of their own thing, and they put more importance into it because it gives them a little bit of a break from the day-to-day ins and outs. At least that's the feedback that I often get. We praise how impressive it is to be out here racing with a number of little kids running around, and they often say that it's their sanity that lets them do it. This team's looking pretty neat, Anna. I don't have too much criticism with the way they're rolling. Perhaps they could accelerate a little bit if I was to be a bit picky, based on their speed and their form is so good. And sometimes I think when a team time trial team looks so neat, perhaps they're not quite pushing right to the limits, but it is still pretty early on.
Yeah, I'm looking at experimenting with some different tactics for the teams that I DS for upcoming, the Prems, and then some teams tomorrow. Is if you've gotten to a point where you can ride really well together and cohesively, and you're taking your turns while you're doing that sink and sprint strategy, I think you could take turns off the front that are only sort of around 10 seconds long, really have huge power pushing at the front, and then just keep that momentum high. On this kind of a course, you'd want to be holding, between 43 to 45k an hour. We can just see here, we race for cake. They're holding around 43, just like I said there. So it'll be interesting to see if any of those teams do that. Some of the newer ones, which this team is definitely following more of a bunch or blob strategy, as I call it, putting a top rider on the front and they just sort of pull everyone behind them. But I think short 10-second bursts on the front, if you've got a really cohesive team, could be the trick.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about Teams Pursuit before, and certainly Teams Pursuit, it was always viewed as just having one real tactic where everybody did one lap turns, pulled off, and that was it. And I've seen teams play around with half lap turns, with 2.5 lap turns, and kind of everything in between. And it is interesting how it changes not only the speed and outcome, but also the dynamic of the team. I think it's quite an interesting point to come to in a team where everybody accepts that some people will do longer turns and some will do shorter turns, that it doesn't necessarily have to look equal to be equal effort. And that's an interesting point to come to with a team. I think you need really clear leadership and really comfortable cohesion amongst the riders to just listen, to be prepared to try a different strategy and see what happens. The small gaps that we're seeing open up there aren't particularly good. That overhead view is a really good way of showing it, because when you are even a couple of meters back, it does change the draft. Of course, it doesn't mean they would be totally outside of the draft, but it's not the most efficient way to ride.
No, for sure. It just looked a little bit like they might have been caught out by those new sort of Zwift drafting algorithms. It just maybe they've got a new rider in there who hasn't sort of noticed a change because they just got shunted off to the side and out of the draft. I will say that there has been some great Facebook posts on the racing page from someone who I think geeks out on this more than I do, around the sort of benefits of having that sixth rider. So at what point should you drop the rider? And I think on this course, he was saying from his analysis that having six riders will gain you 7 seconds. So if you're going to lose more from slowing down for a rider at the back, you've really just got to drop them off. So be pretty brutal in your calculation of that. I know with the teams that I work with, you've just got to say it's not personal. If someone's really struggling, it is better to sort of keep the momentum high. And we are seeing with the We Race for Cake team here, they've got two riders who are just sort of yo-yoing off the back a bit. And this may not be ideal for the whole team momentum. So yeah, just keep in mind that 7 seconds when you're making those decisions. Are you doing well here, keeping that rider there? Are you gaining that 7 seconds, or you're actually losing a bit more time than that?
Yeah, I think it's quite hard to not take it personally at the start when they start talking about, jettisoning a rider, because it is a completely different thing when you're being paid to do a job and, your job for that day is X versus the community leagues, and also versus the people, I guess, Anna, that are kind of new to the sport. And that you come into cycling being told it's a team sport, but very often when you're doing bunch racing, it's quite nuanced to understand how that actually is. I think team time trials in the Zwift world do an incredibly good job of teaching everybody that cycling is a team sport and the benefits of working together before they kind of go out and do those individual bunch races, because it's quite a brutal way to figure it out, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it is a sort of strategy that, interesting seeing a power up being dropped there. Usually we don't see those in a team time trial. So maybe they've been inadvertently activated, which could prove to, I saw this happen a couple of seasons ago, it could prove to make the race a little bit interesting. If you've got teammates who have got a feather up, especially some of those subway climbs or the ones into Richmond Park, you could really pull everyone through on your wheel, but hopefully that was just a one rider anomaly. But yeah, I think you really look at the two strategies here across all the categories. We're looking at the B category here. Some are in it to win. We've got tight battles at the top, and some are in it just to make friends and chit chat along the way. For me at the moment, it's definitely making friends and chit chatting. And I did actually realize, you probably like this, Kate, that I was chatting on Discord for the whole race the other week, and then actually went over to Discord and realized no one else was there anymore. So yeah, some people definitely for the friendship, some want to ride hard.
Yeah, that does make me laugh. You're right. Although I did some Tour of Watopia rides, and when I lead any rides, I'm very chatty. And I realised in the Tour of Watopia rides that maybe I'm chattier than most people, because I wasn't getting as many responses as I usually do. Though it is very social for some. Now, let's just take a look at these split times as they come through, because ultimately this is what will give us a good picture of what's going on. The Bombshells, 12:23 for their 8 kilometre split. So we've got a split every 8K, which is great, because that also gives us a bit of an understanding of the overall picture and how their splits are going. There's already over a minute between the Bombshells and We Race for Cake. So the Bombshells are on a good one. The Fiery Kittens 12.59, Fear Nominal 13.31, We Race for Cake 13.33. Bit of a race within a race there between Fear Nominal and We Race for Cake. We'll see who's possibly gone out too hard in the upcoming splits there. It'll be good to see these other splits come through because then the real picture of the race starts to play out. And the different tactics, not only around, as you were talking about, Anna, who takes what turns, how many, what speed and what powers they might hold, but also their overall pacing strategy. So some teams will be trying to go out pretty hard and just hang on to it. But there'll be other teams that are looking to go out fairly conservatively, and whatever they have left toward the end, they can throw that out. So the Bombshells remain at the top with only Smile On left to come through. So they are having a ripper of a day, or a ripper of a start. And as I was just saying, and I hope they can hold on to this, because that is a very fast first split.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky course, this one. Saying that it's flat, we have had a comment come through from Benjamin Pitt on our Facebook live feed saying that it's deceptive. It's hard actually to get a good pace line. And you can see if you look at the elevation now, it's -2, it's -1, it's going up a little. So it is predominantly flat, but there are portions, especially like I said, in that back half of the course, that if you've gone too hard on this what I'd call the paved sections here in the city, and then you go into the Richmond Park where it just rolls up, and they've got climbs of up to 5% there. If you've burned your legs now, that last part you will just lose a ton of time. So it's we'll keep an eye on those splits. It's the first 8K, but that could mix it up a little bit when we start seeing the 16 and 24K splits as people hit those harder parts of the course.
I remember doing this course as a recon for one of the Tour of Watopias. I guess it was last year because it was in COVID. And they said to me, "Oh, don't worry, we're just going to give you one of the flat courses to recon." And I had to recon on camera the whole time, Anna. So they were filming me doing the entire thing. And I remember at one point, one of the producers piped up and said, "You look very sweaty, Kate." And I was like, "Yes, yep, thank you. Great feedback. Appreciate that." But I can say that even though technically it is flat, it did not feel flat at all. So you're right, those 1% and 2% up and down, and anybody who does any kind of bunch ride that isn't super well controlled will really notice that there's tends to be two styles of riders when it comes to pacing. The first is the rider who can hold a wattage regardless of whether they're going up or along the flat. So that might be, you can sit on 200 watts. Once it ticks up to 1 or 2%, you still hold 200 watts, but you just slow down. And then there's some other riders who are looking at the speed a little bit more. And as it tips up, they try and hold the speed over the top of any tiny little rise. Now, they have huge power spikes, and their overall power profile is incredibly different. We've seen a little bit of that happen right here. I think this is perfectly example in action with the Bombshells, where over that 2%, and again, not too steep, but 2% for a little, two of the riders have tried to maintain that speed. The others have maintained the power a little bit more, and it does cause some splits. They're back. It would be easy to watch it and say, but they're back together straight away. It's not a big deal. But actually, you've already interrupted that flow. You've got two riders who are now backing off. You've got four riders who are now accelerating. And that's where it needs to be really clear what you're trying to focus on. Are we trying to hold the speed, or are we just trying to hold the power? Because you all need to be on the same page.
Yeah, and I've sort of taken a more of a speed strategy lately with how to approach these team time trials, because you can have riders with such different power profiles that for a rider to hold 300 watts, it could be fairly easy. For another rider to hold 300 watts, it could be really, really difficult. Whereas just holding momentum is sometimes just a little bit of a better target and not so daunting. Everyone knows their sort of power numbers, and they'll start to freak out a bit if they're expected to hold something that they think is well beyond their ability. But if they ride to the course and keep an eye on their speed, I mean, these guys are riding a nice 46k an hour here. This is probably why they're sitting in the front with that 5 second lead. That's a great speed to be holding on this course, and I think that tends to be their focus. It looks like they will come up for a pass relatively quickly too on that team in front, just 10 seconds ahead now. So they've got the carrot to chase as they're coming up to a little bit of a squiggly part of the course. They'll lose sight of them, but they would have seen them up ahead of them just in that straight portion.
And it is good. It is very good when you can see a team ahead, because it just gives you that little bit extra to chase. It's quite a long team's time trial, though. So 8K, it's unreal to be going so fast at that point. The 16K mark will be a bit more of an indicator of how they're looking overall. And by that 24K mark, if anybody's starting to dip off with the speed at all, that's where we know that they've possibly started a little bit too hard. I love this view. It makes everybody look like quite wicked races, actually, Anna. I love this one. And as we talked about before, we've got quite a few Tron bikes, but also a disc wheel thrown in there. So they are definitely thinking about the speed out there.
Yeah, this is BRT, I think it is, and you can just see in the background, someone must be riding a pink Tron. You can kind of see it glowing there, that the bombshells are coming up very quickly, just 7 seconds behind now. Have had an interesting comment from Morton over on Facebook. Would it be worth it to set your trainer difficulty to 0% to make it easier to hold a steady effort throughout the whole course and modulate your power? Really good point. So obviously not in the Prem division where you have to have 50%, but in the community division, you could put it down to 0. I've done that myself for some individual time trials. If you're focusing on power, it is, you would have to have the whole team on 0, and you'd have to have the whole team focusing on steady power, because like you said, Kate, if someone else has got their difficulty set to 100% and suddenly they're sort of really drilling it up the climbs and able to put some power in on the downhill, you'll all mix it up. But if you're all on the same page, that could be a good strategy to just keep things really even.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think the other thing I'd add to that, Anna, is that they need to have well and truly practiced and trained with those different trainer settings. I know that in our household we've got 2 trainers, and when I jump on Luke's trainer, I hate it because his is set completely differently. And so I think it's something that you also get very, very used to riding in the Zwift world with however you've set it. So I almost think if they're going to go down that path, they'd want to do so, make that decision at the beginning of the season, that's what they're doing it for, and let everybody train on that a little bit. So we're about to see an overtake here. The bombshells are absolutely on fire this evening. Anna, there's a fair bit of protocol around the overtake, and it's changed a little bit this season. Can you talk us through the changes and what they're going to have to do here, the bombshells?
Yeah, so it is the responsibility here of the BRT team to drop their power as soon as this pass is made, and they must make sure they don't pick up their power and enter back into the draft or repass again. So absolutely the responsibility of the team that's been passed to drop back. So we'll see how well they do that here. You can see the bombshells have upped the pace a little bit, and BRT look to be dropping back. A couple of inadvertently kind of got a bit of a sticky draft, but that looks like a pretty good pass to me. They've really dropped back. It looks like pretty clean air now between the 2 teams, so good job from these 2 to make that happen. One rider may be getting a little bit too close, but her teammates might just say to her, M. Brown there, to just drop it back.
Yeah, there's a lot of etiquette involved, and I think that it is, for the most part, we haven't really seen any messy overtakes where anybody's purposefully gotten in the way of any other team. But that's the point of the new rules, just to make sure that doesn't eventuate at all when everything is on the line. Because, whatever rules there are, people will always push the limits, Anna. So to clarify that, I think that shows even more of an evolution for the Zwift Racing League with the WTRL here. So the bombshells, they're cleanly passed. They are back motoring along, pushing up toward that 40 k an hour. But I am noticing a slight overall drop in pace. We are on 0%, so there's no incline at all.
Mm.
And in the earlier kilometres, they were sitting around 43 k an hour. So it's only incidental. It might be a moment in time, but let's see what these time splits look like a bit further down. We're having another overtake here. Lam Kong, of course, she's unbelievable. She's riding with the Bam Babes, and they've just done another overtake. So now let's take a look at the splits. We Race for Cake and Phenomenal have both come through that second split. This is a good pacing example, Anna, because they were only 2 seconds apart at that intermediate, and in fact, Phenomenal were faster. But look at the difference now. It's nearly up to a minute.
Oh.
16k mark.
Yes.
So Phenomenal have gone out hard, and we can probably see the mushroom cloud already from here.
Yeah, I think they only did have 4 people in their team, so I think unfortunately they all probably got a bit excited, went out really hard, and with just 4, it's pretty tricky, and you will end up probably blowing a little bit. I believe this would have to be Lam Kong for the Bam Babes here, looking fantastic in her kit alone, but we do believe her team is around her. There we go. They're just starting to reappear again here. So we've got Kate as well, Angelique, kind of moving in and out here a bit of who we can see and who we can't, but they're not actually holding a huge pace here. So they're around 38 to 41k an hour. I would have expected from this team, with some of the strength that they've got, to be holding more around that 43. So they're riding okay, I would say, but maybe, you've sort of got Lam Kong, who's very, very strong, and potentially is trying to sort of pull through some teammates who aren't quite on the same level.
It can be pretty tough. It can be equally as tough for the leaders who are a little bit stronger to try and hold their pace as it can be for the other team members. A lot of them who might feel a little bit of pressure if they know that, or they feel like maybe they're not the strongest one out there. There's certainly a lot of mental games involved, but the Bam Babes are not having the cleanest of rides. In points racing so far this season, they've been pretty impressive, actually. I mean, Lam Kong has been super impressive the last couple of seasons, so that's not a surprise. But as a team, they have had a good showing so far. So hopefully they can all regroup a little bit, because this is a little bit disappointing for them. I know that they started reasonably fast, and they would be a little bit disappointed if they're not able to pull this back together. But we'll see what happens. Now, we've got a couple more splits have come through there. And interesting, because on that split, despite some of those pictures we might have seen, the Bombshells and the Bam Babes remain very close overall, only 3 seconds in it. There were 5 seconds in it, in fact, at that first split. So that is a good indicator. It's then a full minute back to the BRT Fiery Kittens and Zed's Sunreal are another 10 seconds back again, but it remains very tight at the top of that table. So as the splits keep coming in, we get a bit of a picture. Here we go. They are all back together. I think we can call that a technical glitch, Anna, where it looks like some of those riders are coming in and out. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because those intermediate splits are telling us one story, that they're working really well together and pushing pretty hard, but the pictures sometimes tell you slightly different ones. I think our technical producer will be shaking his head, thinking that that maybe they have possibly put the invisibility cloak in there or something like that. So we'll have a little bit of a look at that. And they're probably listening to us, Anna. They can probably see each other thinking, what are you talking about? We're all together. So it looked like it was 3 seconds at that intermediate intermediate split time point. That's a pretty tight race, 16k into that 32. So well and truly still on between the Bombshells and the Bam Babes. So let's jump over to the fellas. Anna, we've got the Div 2Bs here and the WMZ Bouncers. They have 5 riders. Now, the question we have to look up is, did they start with 5 or did they start with 4? There's a team not too far behind them. So we're jumping right into the action here.
Yeah, definitely. This I'm not quite sure if they've just made the pass or if they're about to be passed. So we'll see what happens here. Looks like the team behind could be catching potentially. So maybe they're about to be passed, which will be a great one to see. I love seeing the passes in the team time trial, especially in the men's one because it tends to get a little bit more feisty. I see some messages popping up on screen. The women's racing seems a lot more friendly, and thank you, and that's all great. But we've seen some action in the men's races sometimes. So we'll see what happens here. Just
I
three
love
seconds
that.
back as
You
the
love it.
team. I do. I just, it's very memorable when you see those slightly evil sort of messages popping up on the side that get into your competitors' heads, and yeah, it's a bit funny in the men's field. But looks like the WMZ Bumbles have come through fastest, 11:52 for that 8K time check, 9 seconds ahead of the Dirt team. And about 10 seconds ahead there of the AHDR Bandits. So doing very well. Have they gone out too fast? And I'm interested by this team still sitting in 2 seconds behind. So they're somewhat pacing off this team.
Yeah, that's not good. Our judges won't like that particularly. And if anybody's been watching the in real life racing lately, they would know that the commissaires aren't giving a lot of leeway on anything from water bottle throwing to super tucking. So I'm pretty sure the Zwift commissaires won't take too kindly to any drafting. But it looks like they are going for the overtake here. So this is where the etiquette comes in. Um, they have really zoomed past them when they've chosen to there. So that's the bouncers that have just gone past, I think. Um, Caused a little bit of a split here as that has been done, but it looks like they're cleanly past now, which is a good thing. And we won't have to worry about anybody getting disqualified there, Anna.
Yeah, and this team here is doing very well. I'm just wondering if this can't be the Aerodynamics because that's an Australian team, but they've gone through fastest at 11:50. So WMZ Bumbles are actually behind them. And oh, look at that Evo Mad Max 2021, even Stevens with WMZ Bumble on 11:52. And look at those top teams. You've got what 15 seconds separating the top 8 teams at the first time check. I mean, this is very, very close racing. This is great to see.
Yeah, this is now the question is, and this is where in my mind it gets really interesting. I love the afros, by the way, on these avatars on Ashby that we're watching now. Is do they take that and say, great, we've gone out well, let's settle into a rhythm and let's do this? Or do they take those fast intermediate sprints and kind of jump on the adrenaline of that, go faster again, and then find that back half a little bit nasty? I think we'll have a bit of a mixed bag amongst the top 8 of those different strategies, to be honest. So that's a bit of fun and games for us to watch and see what they do. But isn't that incredible? Such tight racing amongst that top 8. It'll be good when that next time check comes in and we can see kind of how that has played out a little bit. And look at that, Anna. It has now extended. We've got the top 2 are looking
Oh,
pretty quick
okay.
there with the Mayhem and the Ringers, but 3rd to 10th remains incredibly close. But they're tied again, 6 seconds between first and second with Mayhem and the Ringers there. So 6 seconds is rather incidental at that point. Now, what was that message on the side? Can I please drop? I always find it really interesting when we see public messaging when they're communicating with each other. I feel like they do that out of a little bit of desperation rather than some private messaging. But what's your thought on that, Anna? Because I wouldn't be communicating publicly if I had another option.
I think this could come down to my original comments on you got to be sort of kind of friends in the team, and maybe there's a couple of teammates who aren't friends at all and just decide, well, I'm just going to
Who
put
are
it up
kind of
publicly and
not
everyone can
friends.
see it. Yeah, kind of not friends. I mean, you got to have a bit of drama, right? It makes it very interesting. So I will go with it. Someone was telling another team to drop. I'm not sure if there's a team called Kana or if there's a rider on that team called that, but it kind of looked like that sort of a message, like, come on, you guys need to drop. Following here, the a rider called the Tron. I wonder if they're on a Tron bike. They must be. Must be that purple rider there. So the LACC team here. Looks like they're all in that same kit, the Buzzy Bee kit, as I like to call it, riding pretty well in the rainy streets of London. But it's interesting to see if these are the teams. I don't know if this is the full list of teams that have come through that first timesheet, but Relentless Mayhem doing very well because from what I recall, they were sitting quite far behind on the overall standings. So obviously have upped their TTT game and coming here to play on fire tonight.
Yeah, that is not a slow time for 8 kilometres. 11 minutes and 12 seconds makes for pretty cracking riding. So that'll get them to under 35 minutes overall, which will be pretty fast if they can do that. LACC, I wonder if that's Lidcombe Auburn Cycling Club. That's a club in Sydney. So I wonder if it is those fellows. They are a club with a very big history in every way of racing. So that would be quite cool. So if we look overall, the Mayhem are sitting in third overall. The Ringers are sitting in second. So Dirt OG now, where have they come through in the intermediate sprints? Because they've been pretty dominant so far. They may just not have come through that time check yet. But no surprise to see the Ringers and Mayhem up there in those time splits.
Yeah, so Mayhem having a great race though. They're ahead of both Dirt OG and Innsbruck Ringers, who are both ahead of them at the top of the table. 1 second behind the Innsbruck Ringers and Dirt OG. I mean, this is a battle. Only 6 seconds between Relentless and Innsbruck. I mean, wow. I don't know how this is going to play out in the last parts of this race, but that is extremely close for our podium league place getters thus far to be split by, 5-6 seconds. It's amazing. This is going to be
It's
a one to
exciting.
watch, that battle between the three, and that is great. I like this close racing, and I mean they're not going to know unless they're someone. Probably their DS will be watching this live stream. If they are, jump onto the socials and say hi and what your team's up to. But they should be watching if they've got a DS to tell them these time splits and make sure that they're staying on point because, I mean, last week or the last TTT I DS'd the Prem girls, there was 10 seconds between second and seventh. I mean, these races are so tight.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? You're right about the DS part, and it's whether or not, like, how cool a head they have, and whether they say, right, we're really in contention here, just double down, keep it steady, and almost have in every time trial, team's time trial that I've ridden, and actually the same goes for individual time trials when you're thinking about pacing strategies and also compared to other riders. And I'll extend it to say that it includes track teams pursuits and individual pursuits. You often go out on a bit of a schedule based on the speed you think you may ride, and everybody stays within that. And they might say to you, no matter how good you're feeling, this is keep within these limits. Like, this is what we're aiming for. And then once you get to, in this case, it might be that final 8 kilometres. Once you get to that 24-kilometre mark, you leave it all out there and absolutely nothing remains in the tank by the end. But there may be some other teams who say, right, we're going to negative split this. We'll start out the first 8K at this pace. The next 8K, we'll increase it again, and so on and so forth to the end. And that entirely depends on the calm of the director, what they're telling their riders, and depending on your strategy as well and the confidence that you have in the team. It can, in many ways, be all about leaving it all out there and nothing to do with any other team. And you kind of hope that if you race the best race, you end up with the result you want. But it can complicate it a little bit sometimes by watching the stream and realizing how close some other teams are, because it might tempt you to change your tactic where that isn't necessarily the best for the overall outcome.
Yeah, and it is really interesting the importance of the DS in these teams now. And I think the other part that's really important is the DS knowing the riders really well and knowing if some are just pushing beyond the limit and telling them when to miss a turn and perhaps saving the legs of your strongest rider. So they take somewhat soft turns for their own sort of power generation in this early part of the course and save it for that later part where they could take longer turns and really help the team pull through in some really tricky parts, get some longer recovery for some of the ones who are pushing a bit too hard. So I think that has been a key learning, is just even the DS knowing the team really well, because people, one, they don't want to disappoint the team by saying, I'm totally wasted. I can't pull a turn. So they'll just pull a turn and dig themselves a massive hole. Whereas if someone's telling you, just don't take a turn here, you're more likely going to just listen to that voice telling you that. So I think that has proved pretty successful for teams now to have that dedicated person just watching and moving things around. Then also just saying when gaps are coming up, closing the gaps, even in a situation like we see on screen now where this team is coming up very close to the team in front, 4 seconds behind. It would just be saying, prepare, guys. You need to make sure you're lifting your power here. Make sure you don't get stuck in the sticky draft of anyone. Let's just pull through. And then once everyone's through, letting everyone know that they're safe. So, yep, everyone's come through safely. Let's get it back on. Let's get back into the order and let's crush this.
So we're looking at Steve Milliken here, and he used to be the brains behind the WTRL. So here's cheers to Steve Milliken. We've got Martin now, but Steve is out racing, and their team is starting to. They're still looking pretty good. Of all the discussion we can do about the different ways to get it done out there, when your team is still together with 6 riders around that halfway mark, you're in pretty good shape. We can see from the top right of screen that there's quite a lot of dots around there, that teams are starting to catch each other and approach. So that's a really good way to get a bit of a gauge on time. We're talking about the women looking to go around that 43k an hour mark. And that's what this team are sitting on. But back to the Innsbruck Ringers, and these are the ones that have been going incredibly fast. They had the second fastest intermediate split for that first 8 kilometres. They're approaching that 16k mark now, so that'll be great to see what they go through that in. But so far, so good. They're looking pretty smooth, Anna.
They are looking really good, and this is they're only 1 second ahead of the dirt team though. So let's see what's happened there. 1 second is very very small in terms of this kind of racing. 1 second will just get chewed up with a good hill climb or a fast group descent. So this is a great battle we've got on our hands. Just want to touch on the tricky parts of this course that these guys will be approaching soon. They'll take a hard right-hand turn and go over a bridge into the magical underground system where they sort of pop out at Richmond Park. But you've got a very steep downhill, extremely short. It's just to go get down into subway. Then they go through and then they hit quite a hard sort of 5 to 6% grade. Again, not too long, about maybe 400 meters before they hit some rollers. But that is a period of time that is danger time for a team time trial. If you've got any sort of legs that have just been burnt out too much in the flats, those little pinches will just detonate them, and that's where you could be seeing some riders drop off, either strategically, good place to drop a rider, or just they have nothing left and they can't contribute to the team anymore. So I think that's where we'll start to see some mix-ups of these nice 6-man teams.
Yeah, and I do think that when you have the liberty of having 6, you also have the liberty of having a different set of tactics than if you have less riders. For sure, and depending on how everybody's feeling, it's a little, I think, discussed consideration for the teams that go a little bit faster. That remembering these are only small little ups and downs, Anna. We're going to head back to the women now, where we've got the 2 and 3% up. And look at this, the bombshells still looking pretty good. So they have already gone through that final time check. So we'll grab that up when we can and see what is happening between the bombshells and the bam babes. But when they go up 2 or 3%, we have to consider that for the teams that are going faster, that little uphill section of 2 or 3% actually goes quicker, of course, because they're moving quicker. Therefore, it has less impact on them. And the difficulty of that is actually more exaggerated on the teams that are going a little bit slower. It seems a little bit unfair. But so it is. So let's take a look at this 24k split. And Anna, the bombshells have pulled away a bit there from the bam babes. They now have 23-second lead heading into that final 8 kilometres, which is a very big acceleration from them from that halfway split where there was only 3 seconds separating them. There is then a big gap back to TBR Smile On. But looking at those 3 splits, it actually looks like the bam babes have slowed down a little bit because TBR and the Bombshells are fairly consistent in their time splits and their speed at the moment.
Yeah, and yeah, there's been a sort of a masterclass here from the Bombshells. Great aerial shot there, just showing how well they're staying in formation along these flat parts of the course. They're going to round this hairpin corner at the end, and then it's basically all game on there. It's just shy of a K to go, I think, from there. You can kind of start to see the finish line as you veer around the left-hand side, and you can just go all in. What I tend to do with the team is we shout a virtual coffee to whoever has the best sprint at the end. So once we open up, whoever in the team can do the best sprint gets a virtual coffee at the end. So good way to have some internal competition, and great thing for me to be sitting there and watch people who have held heart rates of 170 try and sprint it out in the last 200 meters. There's a lot of
Oh,
heavy
you
breathing, I'll
are
tell you that, on
nasty.
Discord.
And for a virtual coffee, I mean, I feel like you
I
should
know.
be Uber Eats delivering coffee to somebody's house for that effort.
I know, I know. Pity I live on the other side of the world, right? So I do want to actually just say, though, as we see the TBR Smile On team is in third. I get this every week. I get their list of nicknames for the team. So the TBR Smile On Kermits are doing the Kentucky Tour Bus Express through London tonight, and there's Captain Tow Truck Tess, Style Queen Sarah, Comet Class Carolyn, Motor on Margarita, Loves to Go Long Linda, Know My Limits Lucy, and their DS is Kickass Kimberly. So always love getting those nicknames every week.
I do love that too. Lucy was on our bunch ride this morning, and she was cruising while one of the other riders took our fast group and zipped away from the rest of us. But Lucy was kicking back and enjoying the retired old lady pace that I provide to my bunch
Yeah,
weekly
right.
on a Tuesday morning. It's very civilized, Anna. You'll have to join us if you can put up with the conversation. Of course, we're very chatty.
It sounds awesome. I have actually seen as well. I know you've mentioned them a few times. I think they race in the C's here, the CMA, Cycling Mums Australia. They've actually planned a year in advance a virtual Everesting, which is awesome. I've signed up for that one.
Oh, that's a good one. And a year in advance. I think that that's probably good notice. It's not something that you want to be doing at last minute. I know that coming up in Australia, a lot of the communities are going to go on a bit of a badge hunting mission. So I'm actually yet to choose the badge that the chicks who ride bikes will be hunting for. So if anybody has any suggestions on something that is motivating but not horrendous, I would appreciate some input into that. Anna, they're coming up to the finish line here for We Race for Cake. So they are starting to get to the end here. We've got a few little bit of a push to the line here for a couple of the different teams. So a few little gaps opening up at the finish. We expect that. They're probably sprinting for that virtual coffee that you offer. I think look just a bit. I think you need to up your game on the virtual coffee there, Anna, because I think you could dangle a bigger carrot there. So now we're back over to the men, and let's see what's going on over here.
Yeah, it looks like we've got TZP here riding fairly well together. It looks like they've hit that 23.5 kilometre mark. So not a huge amount of pavement left to go for this team. They're following a nice straight line strategy. You can see that rider Violago with the aquamarine helmet just dropping to the back there. That's that sink and sprint strategy I talked about. So you're on the front, you do your turn, then you really drop the watts so that you don't stick to anyone and they don't stick to you, and you drop to the back and then just put in a little dig to get back on. So that's why it seems to be a pretty good strategy. But look at that second time check. Relentless Mayhem 21:51, even with the Innsbruck ringers, and 4 seconds back is Dirt. That is a tight race between those two. That is amazing. Even Stevens 1-2 with Dirt only 4 seconds back. I mean, that DS will be going bananas on the channel to just push them in these last sort of 15 kilometers from that second time check. I mean, this is some of the closest racing that we've seen.
Yeah, that's where you just say, all right, everybody, like all in, let's see what they can do. So we're just taking a bit of a look at the course again and where everybody is out on course. So we say it's dead flat, Anna, but even by this scale, you can see that there's some little lumps up and down. It is the greatest London Loop, not the Greater London Loop. And I said it at the start, I'll say it again. I really hope everybody reconned the right. So they're on that red now. They've just headed through that orange. So they are in that final stretch of racing.
Yeah, and this is the part that it's all going to come down to for those top three teams. And we're following TZP at the moment, but the battle is between those top teams there, the Innsbruck Ringers, Relentless, and the Dirt team as they come through into this last part of the course, which isn't too tricky. It is nice and flat this part, but you have come through some really difficult ups and downs. Once you get onto that mall, or the mall, I always get that wrong, the red sort of gravel area, that's where you can put down some serious power because you've only got about 2 kilometers to go. But the ringers here, mostly on Trons, interestingly enough. It's not my fave pick for a team time trial. I always like the knowing when you're sitting up and when you're not. In the Tron, you're always kind of in the sitting down position, so you don't kind of get that visual impact of being in the draft or not. They're coming past a team here at a very hard part of the course as they go very high to that 15% grade coming out of the underground tunnel. This is a very hard part. You can just see someone getting into the sprint formation. They're passing a second team, I think, right here. Wow, 2 teams at once. That is a lot of traffic for this team to get through, and they've really got to make sure they don't burn any legs and leave anyone behind because they need their whole team for this last part of the course. They still have just under 10k to go, so there's a lot of real estate still here, and this is getting all mixed up all over the show. You got Vision there, you've got AHDR, you've got oh my gosh, just way too many teams. They're all mixed up. It's a mess here coming out of the underground, Kate.
Yeah, this is a mess. You've really got to watch your wheels and who you're following here. Sizakov, I noticed, was a little bit back as they came up through that underground. That steep part, that can be a real leg breaker, especially when they're 23k into what is a pretty brutal 31 and a bit kilometre race. So we're starting to get the results in now, just some splits coming in there for the men. Anna, the 24k mark, there's some pretty big time gaps amongst the early ones through that line.
Yeah, I do just want to mention too that we don't actually have any coverage of the women's C or D racing tonight, so we apologise for that. We followed the Bs and have seen those top teams finish there, but we just don't have coverage of the Cs or Ds. So sorry about that, but we are following the B men Div 2 in the APAC region, and we're seeing some serious battles at the top of the field. Not sure how this is going to play out. It's 4 seconds separating the top 3. We haven't seen that 24k time check come through yet from the top 3, so we'll be waiting with bated breath to see the Dirt OGs, the Innsbruck Ringers, and Relentless Mayhem to see just how close those teams are coming into the last 6 kilometres.
Well, those top 3 are pretty close, but then remembering that also, third or fourth through to 10th or 11th were also really close at that first intermediate sprint. It shows that overall, there's quite a lot of races within a race, if you will. Not too much has changed as they've gone through. A couple have slowed down, a couple have sped up. But they've actually across the board remained fairly consistent, a little bit more than what we saw in the women, actually, Anna. So some of that may come from experience. Some of it may just be the sheer volume of teams we've got in this category. I cannot wait for Mayhem to come through, for the Ringers to come through. Did that massive overtake slow them down at all? That's a good question. And talking about good, check out this kit. These guys look a little bit funky town. This is very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting though. This is the dirt team, and I don't actually see their regular dirt kit on. They're using the level 20 Zwift kit, which is awesome. I do love the pink kit, matched up with a pink Tron, looks just beautiful. But yeah, they're not using their dirt kit, which maybe they just didn't want to get confused with the other dirt team out there. There is another one, the Eat Dirt Kreischer, and there's the other dirt team that is in the top three. So maybe they just wanted to mix it up with their team. I have seen on Instagram a lot of kit reveals happening over the last week. And I've got to say, people are upping their virtual kit game. I don't want to say it's because of the fashion police, but there is a lot of sort of hoo-ha going on about when a new kit is released.
Yeah, you don't want to say it, but just quietly you think it. Now, as we've been waffling about fashion, and we will get back to the fashion waffle, the Innsbruck Ringers have come through there 2 seconds ahead of the Mayhem. So this is a bit of back and forth here. They led, the Mayhem led early on. Now they are 2 seconds behind the Ringers. This final 8 kilometres will be an absolute cracker. They're definitely in throw it all out there, leave nothing in the tank kind of category amongst them. So let's see what they can do and what they can pull out. The Ringers, they're looking so neat, Anna. They've still got all 6 riders there. So if any of the team are able to really push the limits for this final 8K, I feel like the Ringers are in a very sturdy position to do so, because they can afford to use 1 or 2 riders up to really push this pace.
Look at their pacing. I mean, they have done this perfectly. They were 6 seconds behind at the first time check. They didn't panic. They evened it up at the second time check, and now 2 seconds ahead at the third time check. Will Relentless have anything left in the tank to make up that 2 seconds? I'm not sure, because the Innsbruck team looks slick as we see them on screen at the moment. Just looking a dream. Passing one of the other teams here looks like AAVF, but just coming through like a steamroller. They're staying nice and together. They're not worried about the traffic at all. They're sort of just riding their own race. They seem to have done an extremely good job here. And look at that Dirt OG. Oh, massive drop. Massive drop. They're 4 seconds back, now 23 seconds back at the 24K time check. Now, that's what I was talking about, Kate, with that bit through Richmond Park where the ups and downs, go up to 5%. It's really hard if you have paced too fast at the beginning. You will lose so much time, and it looks like that's what's happened to the Dirt OG.
Well, here's the Relentless team, Mayhem now. They dropped back to 2 seconds behind. They've got 5 riders, so not 6, but also not 4. Actually, no, they do have 6. Look at that. One of them was tucked very tightly in behind the other one, which is a good sign. If you can't see a rider and they're so well tucked in behind them, then they're doing a very good job in the aero and drafting stakes. Now, what we just said about the Ringers, they're also in a really good position, Relentless, to push the pace. They're also having to deal with a fair bit of traffic. I noticed that the Ringers were thanking a team for getting out of the way and moving over, or maybe it was facetious given the nice interference. Oh, I feel like there's a little. Where's Gossip Girl when we need her?
Passive aggressive.
That is, isn't it? Oh.
That is some passive aggressive comments there. So who knows what's going? This is what I mean.
Yeah,
you have looks like one of their riders actually ended up dropping off, so they might have got stuck behind someone out. So we might have got stuck with that interference. But this is what I mean about the men's race.
Yikes.
You see a friendly comment there and you think maybe things have changed, and then it's followed up by a nice passive-aggressive little dig, and nope, same old, same old.
Oh, that's made me laugh. I really feel like we need a Zwift Gossip Girl, because I think they could probably dish a whole lot of dirt on what goes on behind the scenes here. But you know what? Both teams, both the Ringers and the Mayhem, at the end of the day, have both had exactly the same thing out on course in terms of having a lot of teams they've had to overtake and trying to really push the pace. So I think that they are even Steven when it comes to that. Now, Mayhem have a slight advantage because they are still with 6 riders. This kit looks really good, by the way. I quite like the look of this. It's a little bit retro, but it suits the afros as well. So I'll give them some fashion points here, Anna.
Yeah, they had a few fashion points and then lost a lot of them for the glove and shoe unmatching combo of that rider there with the afro. I never
Oh
liked the
yes,
sort
I
of
forgot
aqua
that's a thing
shoes
for
with the
you.
yellow gloves. I mean, things, then you've got yellow shoes and blue gloves and white shoes. I mean, kit looks amazing with some great colors, but just like match it up a little bit. I've seen when people have announced their new kit designs on Instagram, some of the accessory matching has been second to none. The beard doesn't even match the fro there, which is does that happen I mean, does that happen in real life? Can you have a grey beard and not a grey fro?
Oh,
Is that possible?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think we need to call in the experts to answer that one. Surely somebody on
Yeah.
YouTube can pipe up with that and tell us if your fro and your beard can be different colours.
Yeah, I guess you have a bottle of dye and you can make them whatever colour you want. But that is
Yeah,
a
join Anna
quite the
and Kate. We
statement
will
look
answer
there.
the big questions.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I do like the kit in general. Nice retro looking. I do like this team too. I've actually chatted with M Gui there, or Guai, who you saw on screen for a bit, and they're a lovely bunch. So good to see them. Innsbruck Ringers just down to about 4, although they're wearing a Vision kit. Must be a Vision team, but they're down to 4, which is not great. As we just saw, the Relentless team, I think, still had 5 or 6. So this is the last 2 kilometers of the course. You really want the most riders possible here to gain the most momentum and speed. And it looks as though Relentless does have 6 riders, so they've got the upper hand here. If they can just really, really push and dig to the bottom of the well and just use everything they can to make the most of having this number of riders. I mean, they've only got just under a K to go. So the Ringers, they could lose a bit of time here. It's really going to come down to the wire.
Well, that's the question. Do they have 4 riders because they use them up and to push the pace, or do they have 4 riders because 2 couldn't keep up? Because they're quite different strategies, really. So that'll be interesting. We will find that out based on the overall time. Really, in the end, what's happened there. But I'm not able to call it until they cross this line, Anna, because the Ringers and Mayhem have both looked very fast, and despite the fact that they're down to 4 riders, even through that U-turn, they managed to maintain the speed a fair bit. So I think this is going to be pretty tight all the way to the line.
Yeah, for sure. Gotta say, I've liked the way Relentless have stuck together. Unfortunately for that Relentless rider who I think got stuck in traffic, that's really going to end up making a huge difference as we see a sprint being opened up here. Not a long sprint though. I think they've all tied those legs out. Still up to around 6-7 watts a kg to finish off. So very strong performance here from Relentless. We'll have to wait for the final results to see if they manage to pip the Innsbruck Ringers at the line. They're 2 seconds down at that third 24-kilometer time check. So very, very close racing. Dirt OG unfortunately dropped to 23 seconds behind that pace. And here we go. Unfortunately for the Ringers, they've got more traffic ahead of them coming into the finish. If anyone gets stuck behind them, that's just going to be not good. I don't think they're finishing as strong at all. I just do not think they're looking as cohesive. They're stuck on the team back. And I think, I'm going to say it, I think Relentless may have got them at the end.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a yikes look on my face because the Ringers seem to have come undone a little bit toward the end, but still incredible performance from them, and clearly some frustration from a couple of them with all the traffic that they encountered. That is natural. That is, again, why Zwift have brought in these more robust rules around overtaking, so that unless somebody does the wrong thing, you can't really complain too much when there are rules to follow. So the judges can adjudicate on that afterwards. We've got the Dirt team in that lovely pink kit there coming into the finish. Again, more traffic ahead. There's been a whole lot of overtakes tonight the entire way through, because I think once you can see a team ahead, it really is a little bit of a carrot dangling in front of you. Either that, Anna, or they're all sprinting for the line because they heard about this virtual coffee on offer. And they want to make the most of that. I mean, you know, we'll
Why
have
would you
to
not
ask
want a
them
virtual coffee?
Yeah, it's a thing, right?
Oh no. So TT1D coming through here as well, a little bit further down in the pack, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that played out. So TT1D is type 1 diabetic, so that's quite good. So must be racing for type 1 diabetes. Either a family member has it or racing for the charity here. So always good to see that as well. I see. So if you've got an F in the name, so TT1F, as we see here from Mullins, it means you've got a family member with type 1 diabetes. So I never knew that. So good to and the only reason it might sound a bit funny because I said I never knew that, but I'm talking about it is because I have the producer in the ear telling me, which is quite interesting to know that. I never actually knew that about the team. So great to see them all finishing together for a good cause as well.
Yeah, it is unreal. I love Team Type 1. They've done some pretty phenomenal things. In fact, they had a number of riders off the front, one in particular in a very long break in the Milan San Remo. And everybody always talks about the power of getting a bit of media for your brand, but to have the diabetes conversation at the forefront of elite sport is pretty powerful. So I love seeing them in the Zwift world as well. Xavier Lacourt here, he's rolling it in. The five before, that's when we know that they are talking about their kind of order, Anna, their team's time trial order for the day. That is a way for them to make it a little bit easier by just putting a number before their name so that at one glance they know who they should be behind.
Yeah, that was what you'd call the caboose of the race. So the person who's just sitting at the back, cruising on in. Maybe it was their strategy to get dropped, or maybe they're just having one of those days where they want to take in all the scenery. It does look beautiful here at a dusk time in London town as this team now rolls around the nice -6% grade that they're coming in. So they get some great speed coming into the last 3 kilometers for this team. A great setup there. I love the headband with the fro and the orange detailing on the kit. Is this the other dirt? This must be the other dirt kit. So he's very well known in the community. One of the dirt riders, actually one of the new kits I've seen that I thought looked very, very cool was apparently from a group called MERT, which is Mums Inside Riding Trainers. So keep an eye on that for the next few days. They've just launched it over the last week, and so we'll be pulling it out in the team time trial coming up in the next couple of days. Not sure what division they were racing in or what time zone, but yeah, it looked very good. So it looks like the sister team of Dirt, but these guys looking pretty strong coming into the last 1500 meters.
Yeah, maybe not quite as catchy as Dirt, Mert, but still, all the same, we love the mums and dads that are on the platform, whatever you call yourselves. Some very cheeky names. I let you read one of the trickier ones in the opener, Anna. Let's see what comes up in the finish. This is the C division that we're watching now, so we can see those intermediate sprints. Intermediate split times. Listen to me, the sprinter. I can't help myself but say sprint. Split times and going through that 24K, it was the Choppers who they tagged us on Instagram earlier, actually, Anna, saying like everybody knows that the C is where the action happens. So the Choppers there, they are leading the way ahead of Zed's Unleashed, the Dirty Chum, I like that, the Chargers, and the Dirty Chum on exactly the same time at that 24K mark. But it does look like the Chargers are actually charging ahead to the finish, and perhaps the Dirty Chum are struggling a bit in that back end. There has been a bit of a divergence in tactics across different teams and even across different divisions. But Zed's Son that we are looking at the moment coming into the finish with 5, so that's not too bad, and they're looking pretty controlled, pretty comfortable, but still pretty high speed.
I've got to ask, Chum, that is the stuff you feed sharks, right?
I
I
was
always
going to
remember
say
that from
dogs,
Jaws. Oh,
although
okay. You know in
I think
Jaws
it's
when they
chump is maybe the dog food. I don't
I
know.
think chump is the dog food,
Mm.
and I think chum is what you throw off the back of a boat, and that's what attracted Jaws. all the name associates for me. So Dirty Chum
Oh.
is quite an interesting sort of imagery that's coming into my head as we talk through that name. But looking here at this must be Evo with that magenta kit, and it looks like a mixed team in the men's division, or is it all women? No, there's one guy in there. So a very highly dominant female team in the C category. It is a mixed division, so always great. Had a good chat. Actually, you like this, Kate. Last time in the team time trial, do you remember we talked about there was one of the guys on a mixed team called Gigante, and we wondered if it was a relation of Sarah. It was her dad.
And
We actually had a little
yeah,
bit of an Instagram DM conversation about, well, how great Sarah is, and also how he's really into Zwift racing and races for a mixed team. And he said that it is tricky sort of trying to get the powers right when you've got male and female riders. But he said what they did is the male riders just take the turns on the flats, and when it gets a bit hillier, the females kind of pace them up. And yeah, that's what we got chatting about. But great to realize it was actually Sarah's dad.
I did hear that as well, and that is pretty cool. I love it when the family gets involved. Normally, it's the kids get involved because the parents ride, but we're now seeing a new generation where I think the parents are getting involved because their kids are on it so much. So good to see Papa Gigante out there. And for any of the Gigantes that may be watching tonight, we send our very best wishes to Sarah, who had a nasty accident in Flesh Wallon and broke her elbow, arm, and collarbone all in one go. So
Oh,
uh, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of her back in the Zwift world as she rehabs from that. So we send all our best wishes to her, one of the biggest champions that we get to watch in the Zwift and in the real life world. So they're crossing the line here now. Chanda Singh, he's the man of the community, one of the familiar faces. Good to see him shepherding a group there. And we're seeing quite a lot of teams, Anna, that are having 5 or 6 riders toward the finish. So that's been a pretty good effort across the board.
yeah, it looks like the AHDR choppers have done particularly well in this division, but only 7 seconds ahead of Zed's Unleashed. And they were quite far ahead of the Dirty Chums. So very tight racing as well in the top 2 races as we're looking at the AHDR choppers who I was just talking about. Yeah, finishing very strong. Only 4 riders, but they're really pushing hard off the front. Keeping in mind this is the C category, so the power numbers are a little bit lower, and they're finishing nice and strong. You can see why they've led this out, looks like from start to finish.
Yeah, their speed is still very high. So at this back end of the race, we have been looking at those teams who can stay over that 40k an hour mark as a bit of an indicator of who is still got a little bit of fuel left in the tank, because a lot of them started with that kind of speed, but that back end bit them a little bit. But it's great to see the form. And it's also great, Anna, that over the last couple of seasons, the C's and the D's have really developed into quite skilled riders, not only in the points racing but also in these teams' time trials. They've really learnt the art of the game, and even if they're weekend warriors of sorts who don't have the chance or opportunity to train anything like the pros, they're certainly showing a whole lot of they're kind of disciples of the Zwift world in the way they're executing this racing.
Yeah, I think the benefit of having the WTRL team time trials that they have each week as well. If you want to practice, I mean, you can practice every week. So I think that's what you're seeing a lot of teams doing, is they're sort of having a little bash at it in the Zwift Racing League, and then going, oh, we actually quite like this format. Let's get a bit better, and then they're going and hitting the late week WTRL team time trials. So it's a format that has grown massively on Zwift, and that's why you're seeing such tight racing at the front of the field across all the men's and the women's racing that we've seen tonight.
Yeah, it has been a cracker across all of them. And I've just loved a little bit of the controversy with some of the teams having little digs at each other. I'd love to go be a fly on the wall in their private Discord chat there. So we'll get results up when we can in a minute. But Anna, it kind of surprised me how tight some of the teams were at the halfway mark especially. I felt like some of the earlier weeks have shown some clear favourites emerging, but tonight kind of threw that all into question again.
Yeah, and I think what we saw tonight is a team time trial course which has been well used. People are very familiar with it. And I think that meant there were fast times, but also really close times because there were no surprises. It wasn't like, the ones we've seen around New York where you have to go up KOMs and, there's just such different strategy. Was a very natural back to basics team time trial. It was great to see.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that it is important that some of our courses, Martin at WTRL in particular, they've done a great job in mixing it up over the different seasons and the different courses that they use. But it is important to sometimes come back to these classic, really teams time trial kind of courses and just let them do their thing. A lot of them have been racing, as you said, week in and week out in these team time trial leagues and really honing their skills behind it. So I think it's great to give them the opportunity to just use that, and where it isn't so much the physicality of the course that is causing those results and outcomes, but it's very much based on the skill and how that event is executed. And we saw some real crackers tonight in terms of like Relentless. I mean, they looked perfect to the end almost. The ringers, well, let's talk about that at another time. That could be a very interesting one. And we'll see the overall results when we can to find out what happened there. But first, let's take a look at what happened in the women. And Anna, the Bombshells, they looked incredible from start to finish. So they have taken out the win there, and they're ahead of the Bam Babes. And that gap really opened up in the second half of that race today. TBR Smile On came in third, the BRT Fiery Kittens in fourth, Zed Sunreal in fifth. We Race for Cake not too far back, so pretty tight amongst those couple, and then Phenomenal in seventh.
And looking at the C Cat, we had TBR Smile on Seas. Great to see them taking that one out in 49.38. Very quick time. Rave C Oz, 27 seconds back. AHDRL Crazy Cakes, minute back with the Spin Mafias, a bit further back than that in fourth. Then the Cruzettes in fifth. Lack in sixth, the AHDRL Degenerates in seventh, Herd of Corellas in eighth, and the CMA Queen Bees in ninth.
Well, those Queen Bees will be getting ready for that Everesting in an hour. In the Ds, we had Rave D Oz take the win there ahead of the Diamonds, the Daiquiris in third, and the Herd of Bilbies coming in fourth.
And the men's A's, we have the Aero Masters taking it out in first. We didn't actually watch this race, so it's good to see that Team ZWC and the Masters still battling it out at the top. Bear Claws in third, the TZP Alphas in fourth, Peter Z Vividores in fifth, KRTA Kiss My Anthea in sixth. Got to be careful on that one. Evo Vandals in seventh.
One again.
Evo Barbarians in eighth, the Relentless Chaos. So not the same Relentless we're talking about. They will be the Bees, and I'm excited for that next page. And then the Coalition Genesis rounding out in 10th.
All right, let's take a look at the Bees. And this is what we were watching. Ooh-wee, the Mayhem. They got it back. So 10 or nearly 11 seconds ahead there of the Ringers for Relentless Mayhem. Dirt OG in third, the Aerodynamics in fourth, WMZ Bumble in fifth, WTRL Mercenary Colts in sixth. And these are all pretty close as well. The top three pretty close, and then close amongst the next. We've got the TZP Bedmans in seventh, Evo Mad Max 2021 in eighth, the TT1 Bruisers, so that's Team Type 1, they were in ninth, and the AHDR Beers rounding out that 10th.
And in the C category, we had Zed Sunleashed in first. Only 8 seconds back was AHDR Choppers. 20 seconds back, AHDR Chargers. This is a tight field. So many within just a minute. Fourth, the TZP Chuckies. Fifth, the Dirty Chums. 37 seconds back. Eat Dirt Cheap in sixth. Valhalla Levatines in seventh. Tune Bikeworks C in 8th, WMZ Cheetahs in 9th, and Evo In-Betweeners in 10th.
Yeah, you're definitely getting the curly names here tonight, so that's a little bit funny. They always trip me up when I get
fair.
them. Yeah, noted. Haha. We'll get the Ds. You can head over to WTRL.racing to have a look at the full slew of results. Anna, thank you so much for joining me this week. It's been a great week of racing. I particularly loved the Biffo there in the B Div for the men with Relentless coming out on top. So that was a great race for them. And interesting how the tides can turn, isn't it? So thank you very much. And, well, good luck tomorrow with the teams that you're working with, maybe some lessons learnt this evening. And you will be up next in Europe for the EMEA commentary, I believe, chatting all things teams time trial in that time zone. And then I'll be back with Dave Toll to round out this week's racing with America West in about 12 hours' time. So, how it works. All right. Well, Anna, thank you again for joining me. Go back to that whiteboard, write everything down that you've learnt tonight. And next time we can dissect all of that.
See you later.